Welcome to the Decent Crypto Podcast. Today is Wednesday, September 21st, and we are live with our newest Decent Deep Dive today on Cosmos. Matt, how you feeling?
I'm feeling excited to talk about Cosmos. I'm a little wistful for the days of deep dives on the merge, but the merge went successfully, and now it's time to move on to bigger. And
now we can do 7 deep dives on the Cosmos ecosystem, with today. Look, we made a promise to our first and most loyal listener that we would do one on Juno when his bags were sufficiently wrecked. And now that they are, we have to follow through. So
the time has come.
The time has come. Today we're focusing on Cosmos. We'll go into a little bit of the history, a little bit of the fundamentals of the technology. There are a few different components to how Cosmos works. So we will break it all down. All right, Matt, are you ready?
I am so ready. Let's get into the history here. I think it's a little longer than probably most of our listeners realize, right? Cosmos dates back to early days of blockchains. You want to give the history?
So Cosmos has been around since longer than either you or I have been in crypto. Cosmos was founded in 2014 by this guy, Jay Kwan. So Cosmos actually, I guess, taking a step back, when we referred to Cosmos, there are a lot of things that we could be talking about. Cosmos has its own consensus mechanism. Cosmos has its own blockchain. Cosmos has its own kind of building blocks to build your own blockchains. Cosmos has a communications network to intercommunicate between all these different blockchains. So when we say the word Cosmos, it's really referring to the whole ecosystem. And people could be referring to different parts of that when they actually say Cosmos. But the core building blocks were starting to be built in 2014, starting with what's called Tendermint. So Tendermint is Cosmos's consensus algorithm. It is a Byzantine fault tolerant consensus algorithm. It was really kind of pioneered, I think, by Jay Kwan, at least in the proof of stake blockchain context.
And I mean,
proof of work.
To put it in perspective, right? Like, this was like one of the early forays into proof of stake, really. Like, maybe the early foray into proof of stake.
Yeah, this is before Ethereum existed and before Vitalik started writing about proof of stake on Ethereum. Obviously, Ethereum launched a proof of work chain, but proof of stake was, in 2014, it was not a thing, really.
Yeah, and so Cosmos kind of like sprung out of, or Tendermint, the consensus mechanism sort of sprung out of this desire to, like, what if we did proof of stake? And, like, could it work, right? At that time, it was like really an unknown, and so it was like a big research area, right? And I feel like this kind of ethos sort of permeates Cosmos across the board. That, like, it is sort of more of a research heavy, like it was born out of research. Right.
Yeah.
And so the early research piece was this proof of stake consensus algorithm. Should we discuss Tendermint a little bit, or do you want to keep going through the history?
Do you want to talk about it a little bit? I think you're more
absolutely
well versed on this.
So the idea behind Tendermint, right? There's really two core components, I think, that differentiate it from Bitcoin's like proof of work, or Ethereum's, at that point, proof of work algo. So the first thing is proof of stake, right? Can you reach consensus through some other mechanism other than proof of work? And then the second component, and this is like really a core one to like a lot of other features that you see with Cosmos, is this notion of like instant finality. And so with proof of work, finality is always probabilistic, right? Because it's based on what chain is the longest, and that can change. Whereas with Tendermint, you know, whoever's turn it is to make a block makes that block, and then it gets finalized by like the other validators, right?
Okay,
Now,
so it's preset, kind of.
yeah, it's sort of like when a block gets made, it's final, and like that's that, right?
Okay,
And
I guess
the
the
rationale,
validator. Well, I guess like the validator, like ordering, or you know, the like
yeah,
whoever gets to
it's
validate the
known in
next block.
advance.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's known in advance who's going to validate the next block, and then there's a lot more like cross communication among the validators with Tendermint than in like other consensus algos, where like everyone will sign off on. I want to say it's like the entire validator set attests that like yes, that is in fact the latest block, and so
Okay.
you know. The issue here, right, is that you wind up with a lot of cross communication among the nodes. There's cross communication for like, what is that? You know, whose turn is it? What is the next block? And then, yes, I attest that like I've seen that block and that is the latest block. And so the issue with cross communication, right, is like as you grow the number of nodes in a network, the number of edges between those nodes grows exponentially. And so Tendermint doesn't really scale super well. Right. Like if you look back in the original Cosmos white paper, the you know, the limit was something like 100 validators, right? And they're hoping that like with improvements in, you know, network bandwidth and silicon and all that, that they can eventually scale to 300 validators as the cap. But today, most Tendermint based chains limit it to something like 100 to 130 validators.
Okay.
So
and it
you
will
have this like,
yeah, and it will not really go any higher than 300 in the conceivably, like ever, really.
yeah. The issue is that like as you start to scale beyond even like 130, you start to see issues with performance, and so the blocks wind up happening. You can't have block times that are nearly as fast after that point, because everybody needs to attest to like that they've seen that block, right? And so, you know, it's sort of like you get this benefit of instant finality, but at the cost of like decentralization and permissionless participation and all that. I mean, it's still permissionless, right? But basically, most Cosmos chains, the way that they implement this is whoever is staking the most, they're like validator number one, and then the next most is validator two, all the way down to like 130. And then if you or I want to stake, we need to stake at least as much as that 130th one in order to participate in the block rewards and securing the blockchain and all that.
Okay, I see. So it's basically the top 100 stakers will be validators, and it could be a rotating kind of crew.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, and it works that way for anything that's Tendermint based. Which is quite a few things, right? Which is like
quite a few
Binance
things.
Smart Chain.
Binance Smart Chain, Polygon Proof of Stake uses effectively Tendermint consensus under the hood. Doge Chain, right? Because it's built on Polygon Edge, which is also built on Tendermint, right? So Tendermint powers like a huge amount of the world's blockchains in aggregate, right?
Okay.
There's at least 50 Tendermint based chains, if not more, right?
Okay.
And so when you talk about Cosmos, that's just like one blockchain built on this Tendermint consensus algo, but there's more, right? Like a lot.
Yeah, there's a ton. There's a ton. Can you bring the mic a little closer? So, okay, Tendermint was really the first kind of core building block for Cosmos, right? And just to kind of not complete the history, but to continue with the history, the second co-founder is Ethan Buckman. He joined a couple years later, and him and Jay Kwan kind of continued building out the rest of Tendermint, and then continued to then actually build what is known as the Cosmos Hub. So do you want to talk a little bit about what the Cosmos Hub is? Like, you know, the reason to have this consensus algorithm is to be able to build blockchains more easily, right? So should we go into like the first blockchain built on kind of I guess Cosmos is probably the first blockchain using Tendermint, right? Or was it not?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like the biggest one, right?
Yeah.
Or it's the central one. So let's discuss the hub, because basically Cosmos isn't just like one blockchain; it's a network of blockchains.
Yeah.
At least that's the vision, right? So the Cosmos hub is meant to serve as a central ledger, like for the entire network. It maintains state of token balances, basically. And then you have these separate blockchains that are networked together called zones. So when you want to transfer tokens from one zone to another, it goes through the hub. And so the hub acts as this central ledger, right? So when you want to send like a transfer of tokens from like one zone to another, you need to have three blockchains like that are in agreement about this. You need to have the source, where the tokens are coming from. You need to have the hub, and then you need to have the destination. And all those chains need to commit transactions in order for the interzone coin transfer to go through.
Okay, and how do those three all like interconnect, I guess?
So the interconnection is through something called IBC. Inter blockchain. I actually don't know what IBC stands for.
I think it's inter-blockchain communication.
Yeah, and it's a generic protocol for cross-chain messaging, and it works pretty similarly to Layer 0. Dear listeners, if you're interested in Layer 0, definitely check out our deep dive on Stargate. I think we went through it pretty thoroughly there. But basically, the whole thing sort of rests on this idea that like you can have deterministic consensus, right? Otherwise,
what does that mean?
Have like so with Bitcoin, it's probabilistic consensus. At any time, a block could get replaced by another block, right? There could be a fork, right? Which is why you need to wait like at least 6 blocks, because as the probability, like as you get longer and longer chains, the probability that like that one block changes to another block gets infinitely small, right? There's just
because
like
to put in the work,
required. Yeah. But with Tendermint, you have like much more cross communication among validators, and so they can reach this like deterministic consensus, not probabilistic consensus. So you can have this instant finality, and that's meaningful, right? Because if you want to send, like say like let's take an example. We have Bitcoin, right? It has this probabilistic consensus. Say I send one Bitcoin transaction in block number 10 that says, hey, I'm bridging my Bitcoin from Bitcoin to, let's call it the Cosmos hub, right? Like so you send it to this bridge address, your Bitcoin gets locked up there, and then you want to like publish the like receiving of that Bitcoin on the Cosmos hub, right? Like with any bridge, right? You get back to BTC.
Okay.
Well, block number 11 comes along, right? So I'd send this in block 10, and then immediately I receive my BTC on the Cosmos hub. Let's say block 11 comes along and gets built on top of my block, but then some other miner comes in and says, no, I have a different version of block 10. And block 11, and now they're competing, right? And so you have a fork in the chain. Now, if that version of the chain gets extended to block 12, block 13, block 14, 15, before the original, or before the one that had my transaction gets extended, then like that will become the canonical longest chain, and that represents the consensus for the state of the world.
Okay.
And that's an issue, right? Because in this version of the chain, I never locked up my BTC. But I still have BTC on the Cosmos hub. So so generally, like this probabilistic finality creates an issue for cross-chain communication, because you never know if something's going to get reorged out or forked out or whatever. There is a probability that like my transaction doesn't actually wind up making it into the consensus state of the world, right?
Okay, I see.
And so now I have unbacked Bitcoin on the Cosmos hub, and that's not good.
Yeah. Okay, I see. So in order to have this kind of inter blockchain communication, really. You have to have the instant finality. Otherwise, it won't work. Otherwise, there's this kind of threat of, I don't know, like a reorg or something like that. Even a few blocks
fork,
down the line, that would
and if
yeah.
you look at like, and it's similar to like sending it to a centralized exchange, right? If you send your Bitcoin to Coinbase and then you sell it, like Coinbase makes you wait. They make you wait like I think it's like 6 blocks, because
it's
by the
different
time
for each chain, they make you wait for a little bit.
It's different for each chain. Yeah, for proof of work Ethereum, it was like 32 blocks. Now I think they've extended it just for safety's sake to like 80. Because proof of stake ETH is pretty new, right? It's like a temporary increase. But on Ethereum, like on proof of stake Ethereum, you get finality, I think, after 2 epochs, which should be 64 blocks. Or maybe no, 32 blocks. Anyway, you do get finality in these proof of stake systems. Eventually, there is a time when you can say, yes, that is the state of the world, right? For Bitcoin, it's always probabilistic, right? Like in theory, if you had infinite hash power, you could go back to any block you wanted and extend that chain with your version of the chain. But it's economically infeasible, right? It's probabilistic though. Like it is theoretically possible. On proof of stake chains, you can actually have much stronger finality guarantees, and that allows you to have interesting things like cross-chain communication, where like you know that block is actually finalized, and so you can do things with things that happen in that block.
Got it. Okay, so let's pause here and just on what we've laid out, kind of paint a picture of what Cosmos is actually trying to do, what their vision is with all of these building blocks in place, right? Because we've covered some of the like very core fundamentals. It's like this new kind of consensus algorithm for proof of stake chain specifically, this emphasis on instant finality so that you can have cross-chain communication, this ease of actually communicating across different chains that are all built on, the previous building blocks. And then having this Cosmos hub as the centralized kind of ledger across all of these different chains. All right, the fundamental question of our podcast. Why does all of this exist, Matt? What is the goal here? What is the vision? Why are they doing all this stuff? Because it seems like you said, this is a much more research-oriented approach. They have kind of started building the blocks, and now it seems like maybe everything is really coming together. So what was the vision? What is the vision? What can things look like in the future?
So the vision here is really around scaling, right? And the idea is, if you think about Ethereum, right, like to use an analogy that I've heard before, it's like a supercomputer, right? It looks like one monolithic, like beefy machine, and it's kind of more expensive to have one large computer than to have a network of computers that are communicating, right? And if we're going to scale out blockchains for like true like global adoption, we're going to need a lot of block space. We're going to need a lot of little computers that are able to transfer value between each other. And that's really like the value proposition behind Cosmos as a network, is that, you can have a chain for anything. Like you and I might have a video game and we want to like incorporate some blockchain elements. We might actually just have our own chain that connects to the Cosmos hub so that people can transfer assets in and out, right? But that way we're not competing with things like NFTs or DeFi or whatever for block space. We have our own app chain. So Cosmos is really like all about this like purpose-built single app chain vision of the world, where we have lots and lots and lots of blockchains that can cross-communicate. And that way block space is theoretically infinite, but you can always transfer value across them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. And the way that this is all secured is by having a shared validator set, or, like how do they ensure that these other app chains like don't become crazy centralized and like cause havoc across the, whole network of networks, basically?
Yeah, so basically, like, let's break down like a cross-chain value transfer a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
So you have like, in the example before, we had like Bitcoin transferring to Cosmos. Let's to the hub. Let's say we have two Cosmos-based chains. We have like we have chain A and chain B, and then we have the hub kind of in the middle. So chain A creates a block, right? And in that block, there's like a transaction that is trying to send some value to chain B. When that happens, you basically use like some fancy proof system called Merkle proofs, where you can prove that that is the latest block, or like the block hash is the latest block, and then in that block, there was a transaction that sent some value. It gets committed to chain A, the Cosmos Hub, and chain B. That commitment is only as good as the security of each of those chains, right? So it's kind of like you kind of need to choose as a user which blockchains you find to be like reasonable, right? But things like total supply are controlled by the hub, and so it's not like I can just print tokens over here on chain A and then send them to chain B.
So even total supply on the other chains is controlled by the hub?
Yeah, the hub will not like allow a transaction that like sends, like maybe I can print up as much USDC on chain A as I want. Like I control that chain, right? Let's say. But if I ever try to transfer it, the hub's going to be like, whoa, slow down, buddy. Like the total supply of USDC is not what you think it is.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And so when they say
the
total supply, okay, real quick. So when they say the total supply, is that the total supply across all Cosmos chains? Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
So that Cosmos Hub serves as like the central ledger, right? For like how much USDC should be on each of these chains, right?
Okay. And so it's the central ledger for all tokens across all networks?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Cool.
And so that way, maybe I can't even really print USDC on chain A without getting permission from the hub or whatever. Or, if I do print it, like it doesn't, when that ledger like doesn't balance, anytime I try to transfer anything out of chain A, it's not gonna work. And so my USDC is effectively valueless. So the hub serves as this like check, right? It serves as like a sentry that's watching to make sure that, that when anybody tries to transfer tokens from one chain to another, that all of the like balances match.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. So that's kind of how it self-regulates.
That's the idea. Chains. So the hub is like really crucial as like a security mechanism, right? And then for a user transferring value from one chain to another or interacting with the chain, like you have to only interact with chains where you like are comfortable with the validator set. So if there is one like heavily centralized chain in the Cosmos ecosystem, you as the user are taking on the risk, right? And so the idea is like for some applications that's fine, right? Like, decentralized social media, like maybe I don't care how, like it's already centralized, if I decentralize it a little bit more, that's a step forward. So maybe I'm comfortable with decentralized Twitter only having like 10 validators, right? And those validators are not necessarily staking the Atom token, is one other thing, right?
So so when we talk about this, one of the core concepts here is shared security, right? They're like talking about how these other chains share security with like the main Cosmos hub.
Let's break down shared security a little bit, right? It's helpful probably to understand the state of the world today, because shared security is really more of a
always helpful to understand the state of the world.
Yeah. How did we get here? Where are we? The question I ask myself every morning.
Exist?
Where the hell am I? I've been nomadic lately, and just like every day I wake up like, where the fuck am I? I'm like, okay, I'm in New York. So, like, if you think about the hub, let's just take the hub. Hub is like a proof of stake blockchain, right? And the stakers are staking Cosmos's native token, the Atom token, right?
I think
But then,
real quick, would it be helpful to understand like how the hub even came about? Like what was the hub was found, like Cosmos Hub was founded, I think like 2017, something like that. And its main goal was to basically serve as a centralized like force, right? And the centralized ledger. And so the validators for that hub are validating that chain basically, and they are then receiving Atom token, right? That is the central token of the Cosmos Hub. And when we say Cosmos Hub, it's like the hub is basically just a blockchain, right? It's just like a blockchain.
yeah,
And there's this idea of like the hubs, and there are also zones, right? These are all just blockchains, right? The hub is the central one, and then the zones are all just other blockchains.
yeah. And the zones can look very different from one another, right? Like there are some zones that use the EVM. There are some zones that use other virtual machines, right? There are
so what makes them
and smart contracts?
What
right?
makes them zones? What makes them Cosmos zones?
It's that connection with the hub, right? So it's that connection that it can use IBC to communicate with the hub is the idea.
Okay. And so is it just the IBC component, or is this where this shared security idea comes back in?
I'll get to shared security in a moment.
Okay.
So you might have a zone, let's call it decent zone, like for our podcast followers, and where they go to like, I don't know, mint NFTs and like sticker NFTs. We got plenty of stickers, right? So maybe the native token for our decent chain is decent coin, right? And that's like what validators are staking to validate and add blocks to the blockchain, right? So you have a proof of stake blockchain, you have to stake some kind of token, ideally one that has value. Decent coin obviously has plenty of value. So otherwise it would be economically feasible to like 51% attack it, right? Tendermint actually, because of some of the assumptions it makes, 33% is enough to halt the chain. And like different things can occur. Like at 66%, you can like really mess with the state of the world. And like commit blocks, right? Overwrite blocks, like, slash people willy-nilly, like you can do whatever you want. At 66%, you basically have root access. At 33%, you can halt the chain. Neither of which are great, right? So like that's why decent coin needs to have like some kind of value, right? Because you want it to be expensive to attack the network. So the central hub, the Cosmos hub, their token is the Atom token, right? And then our token is the decent coin, right? Now this is kind of an issue, right? Because you have to bootstrap some kind of value. Obviously, decent token has a lot of value to it, but like some other zone, bankless token, for example, is valueless, as we all know.
So when we launch the chain and we launch the token, right, people need to be able to, I don't know, get that token somehow. The only way I would assume is either we're airdropping it, or it's going to be like, people need to validate our chain. It could be pre-mined, or we distribute it to validators, right?
We find a set of people that are willing to serve as validators, and we airdrop them some tokens. And like the token supply is like malleable, right? Like you can, or the supply like architecture. So you could airdrop later. You could airdrop to users. You could have block rewards. You could have no block rewards. But we get it. We mint our tokens and we get them out there somehow to the people that are staking them, right? And then they start making blocks. That's sort of the idea. Now,
so initially, we need to find validators somehow. We need to bootstrap this network of validators to actually keep our chain going.
Like what we'd probably do in practice is run some ourselves, and maybe like if we raise capital, like some of the VCs that we raise from, they'll run validators too. We get some of our friends to run validators, but you can also make it permissionless, right? And just put the decent token into an AMM somewhere, and then whoever wants to can come in and buy some to stake it, right? And
got it.
it'll just be limited to that top 100 or so validators. And so it can be like permissionless as well, right?
Yeah.
For some chains it is, for some chains it isn't. Like some people, like maybe like we want order in our in our decent chain, right? In our decent zone. And so like maybe we just say absolutely not. We're running the validators. Good luck, right? Like like there would be chaos. No, but maybe we're comfy with the chaos, and we think that like broadly speaking, like the incentives are aligned for everyone to get along, and so we open up the validator set to whoever we want, right?
Yeah.
So does that make sense? That's sort of how we get started.
Yes.
The now, like, let's rewind a bit. Like the Atom token is only getting used in the hub, and our token is getting used in our zone, and that's broadly the state of the world today, right? This is kind of the
Atom
issue
token. Just one last thing. The Atom token is serving the same exact purpose that our token is serving on our chain, right? Just for the hub and nowhere else.
It's it's the staked token that provides security, right, for the network.
And is it also the gas token for like when transactions happen on the hub?
It's also.
And then what about gas on other zones?
You can do as you like. So we might choose the decent token. We might choose USDC. We might choose to make it gasless, but obviously we would, you need to create some kind of barrier to spamming, right? Like you can't have zero gas fees, or else like everyone's going to spam your network. The same issue that Solana has, like pretty frequently. So you need, so generally a gas token of some sort, right?
Makes sense.
Cosmos is super flexible, right? You can swap out like whatever logic you want, right? We could have flat fees for our gas, for example, the way that Solana has, right? We could have a fee market, the way that Ethereum has. We could make our we could literally make our gas token bankless token, and then make our staking token the decent token, right? Like we can do as we like, and we don't have to touch Atom at all. That's so we can basically know, right? Like if people want to interact with the Cosmos zone, they don't necessarily actually need any Atom at all. And it's worth noting that.
We could have done everything you just described, launch our own chain, get validators supporting it, launch our own token, do all of that, and literally never have one Atom in our wallet, like in our Kepler wallet.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to pay a little gas or something to, I don't know, launch
to do cross-chain transfers, but no, it's there's no, it's not like Polkadot where like there's a centralized like place where you go to register your chain as like one that's connected. Any blockchain that like operates, roughly speaking, if it operates with and it conforms to like the standard for IBC, it's IBC compatible.
I see.
That's the idea. So like that's kind of an issue, right? Because Atom is not actually, like, they built out this incredible technology and there's this huge network of blockchains, but in reality, like none of them are actually using the Atom token as their staking token or as their gas token. Right? Like everyone's using
tokenomics.
Tokenomics for sure. So one more note before we get into shared security, right? Or this will lead us into shared security. Obviously, the decent token has a lot of value, right? And so it would be, it creates that economic cost to attack the network. But say you're a slightly lower quality podcast, you're less than decent. You're perhaps, to borrow a phrase, you're bankless. Like if Bankless wants to launch their own Cosmos zone, they need their token to somehow be worth something in order to make it a useful staking token. Otherwise, the cost to attack the network is super, super low. So there's a bit of a bootstrapping problem here, right? Where like you're starting to get your blockchain, built, and you airdrop your tokens, and that's at the time when like your ecosystem is at its least mature, it's at its weakest. And so people don't really ascribe a lot of value right as you're starting out.
Right.
And so they're just, they get the airdrop, they're just going to dump that token, right? Potentially. And so there's a cold start problem where you're trying to get your zone and ecosystem and apps built out, but you need your token to have some value in order for your chain to be safe. And you can't really create that, you can't create that value until like your chain actually has stuff going on there and economic activity and believers and a community, right? So there's, the idea of shared security is like, maybe there's a way that we can get around this. And we can have, we can inherit some security from the Atom token and like the hub and all of that. And so we can use their validators and their stake as a way to reflect like our child chain stake. So there's this notion of a parent chain and a child chain. So the hub would be the parent chain. Then Bankless would come in and they would say, hey, we'd love some validators to build blocks on our blockchain. We'll pay you in Bankless token if you're down, or in USDC or whatever we want, right? We'll pay you to run the shared security model, but we need you to like commit your stake to be slashable for our chain as well, right?
I see.
And so
would they then be buying the Bankless token and then validating the chain with that token then?
No, so they still have their original stake of Atom that they're using for the Cosmos Hub. That's the stake that they're using. They're like double staking, I guess. They're staking it on the hub, so they can get slashed if they misbehave on the hub, but they can also get slashed if they misbehave on the child chain, the Bankless chain. And so Bankless can choose to compensate them however they want, right? Like they could say, yeah, we have a Bankless token. We'll pay you some as block rewards for, as a thank you for like staking your Atom token and like building blocks. They can have an offline agreement with the validators and be like, yeah, I'll pay you $500 a month. Please validate our chain. It can really be anything.
And in that shared security model, they don't actually have to have the native token of that chain. Like they can basically stake their Atom and get slashed in the Atom stake, and they don't have to really touch the Bankless token at all in that model to provide the shared security.
There doesn't need to be a Bankless token at all, I would say. Like if you wanted to use...
But if there is, like I'm saying, if there is, right? If there is, and that's the main token that's used to validate the chain and provide security for the chain, then can you come in as a validator of the hub and basically just stake your Atom and not have the native token, even if that one exists, and that's the one providing security?
Whatever you have staked is the one providing security.
No, I get that, but it's like in our situation, we have Decent as the one providing security, right? Decent token.
Yep.
Then, like in the shared security model, how can somebody who is staking on the hub and has Atom, how can then they like double stake that Atom on the Decent chain when our native token is the one providing security?
So the native token doesn't provide security in that model. Sorry, there's two different, right? Like, yeah. So the idea here is that like, if you're Bankless and your token is worthless, then you can't get any security out of it to begin with. So you're like, fuck it, I might as well just like have people stake Atom or something.
Okay, I see. So basically your token is just like an airdrop token. It's not actually providing security at all. It's just like,
you might not even have a token, right? Like if you're, imagine you're like a game studio and you want to build out some blockchain game. You might just have people pay for shit in USDC and pay their gas in USDC, and then you pay the validators in USDC, and the validators are
staking Atom. Okay, so this is
USDC. Like you could have them stake USDC. Right.
Okay. So basically the idea here would be launch your chain, have the shared security model initially where people are staking their Atom or staking whatever other coin, get usage on the chain, for, using those validators, existing validators as the providers of security. You pay them out somehow with your, VC funding that you've gotten. once you have usage on the network, then you can distribute your own token in whatever way you want, and then that can eventually provide security for your chain. Is that kind of how it works?
If you want to, but you may also be satisfied not launching a token.
Yeah. Well, who's satisfied not launching a token? That
anyone who can launch a token,
yes,
will launch a token.
Anyone who can launch a token will. Yeah, exactly. It's bound to happen, dude.
So that's kind of the idea behind shared security, and the state of the world today is like it doesn't exist yet. Shared security is still pretty theoretical because there are these issues where like, well, what happens if I get slashed for like one chain, but like I didn't actually like misbehave there, and like somebody just 66% attacked me or something. Can I double stake, or do I need to add more stake, right? Do I need to get them to stake my token somehow, and maybe that's the only one that can get slashed, right? There's a lot of, but then it wouldn't really show the security. There's a lot of open questions, and it's still very much like a research question, the shared security model. Look, there's another issue here, which is like, if I'm a developer, how do I get in touch with people that are trying to provide that shared security?
Probably hit up that Cosmos email, support email. Like, hey guys,
like we don't know who the validators are necessarily. Like, yes, there are 100, but there might not be 100. In a Discord server, like there might be an unknown party that is participating as like a staker of Atom, right?
I think it's listed out. No, isn't it listed on the?
But I mean, they're
Cosmos network.
It's pseudonymous, right?
Cryptocito, bro. Cryptocito, big YouTuber in the Cosmos world. He's one of the big stakers. Cryptocito. He puts out good Cosmos content.
It's a really interesting business model, right? Not as good as ours. Yeah, look, like there's one. There's like Figment, Multi-Chain, Citadel. Is that really Citadel? We don't know. Then there's one that just says no fees till 2025. Nice. That's the name of the validator.
It's the only one I would trust.
It's a super, super interesting business model because you're limited, right, to the top like 100 or 130 or whatever the network allows you to have validators. And so if you want to stake your Atom, you have to stake through an existing validator. So this is why, like, when you want to stake Atom, you kind of do have to delegate it, right? Like, unless you're going to wind up as like in the top 100, you have to delegate. And so
if you're not in the top 100, there's no way for you to like earn any kind of staking rewards at all.
The only way to do it is to delegate.
Wow. So it's even more, you're really out of luck unless you got mad stake.
Mad Atom. Exactly. And the thing is, it's actually quite difficult unless you are like a centralized party. It's difficult to get enough like core mass of Atom token to crack the top 100. Like, the top ones are people that are just getting delegated, right? Coinbase, Chorus One, right? Like Kraken, like generally speaking, like the big Figment, right? Stakefish. The biggest validators are the ones that are not like just validating with their own like proprietary stake. They're taking stake on behalf of users, right? They're taking delegations, and like that counts toward your size, right? So that's the thing, right? It is like effectively like you wind up delegating. And so if you're a YouTuber, right, this is an interesting business model because you go out, you put out a fuck ton of Cosmos content, right? Everybody knows that you're the Cosmos guy, and like, of course you would stake with that person. They take like a 1% cut of the staking rewards. Yeah. They don't really have to do anything. You pay like if I were going to do it, I would pay Coinbase Cloud to run my validator for me. It can't be more than a few $100 a month, right? Because it's like very little compute. And I would just like, rake in the like referral fees effectively.
Right.
So it's, as an aside, like it's pretty interesting. So that's the notion of the Atom token and shared security. And, I think like shared security is really interesting because it's not super different from like, it's a little different from Avalanche. They don't really have that model, but like with Supernets on Polygon, basically that's the idea. It's like the stake token is Matic, And then you can do whatever the fuck you want, like in terms of like gas or logic or whatever, right? And so that's the notion of shared security.
Okay. Very interesting, but still a theoretical thing.
Still a theoretical thing. Yeah, I think it's there's two issues to solve here. One is like the technical side of things. Like, is it reasonable to like, do people need to stake more atoms to participate in your ecosystem, or like, is their existing stake okay? Like, what happens if they get sloshed and they drop out of the validator set for like top 130? Like, do they also drop out like immediately from your validator set? And, like, could that fuck with your level of decentralization? A lot of open questions there around like the functionality side. There's the other problem, which is like you have to create a marketplace effectively where like people pay validators to provide security to their blockchain. You pay them somehow. You pay them in airdrop tokens. You pay them in stables, in fiat, whatever. But you got to pay them somehow. Maybe you just pay them in MEV, right? Like maybe that's enough if you operate like a decentralized like DEX chain, a DEX app chain. But this marketplace needs to exist. There needs to be like a forum for communication, and it's not really there yet.
Okay, that makes sense. It also sounds like, just from a actual like technical perspective, it's not real. There are unsolved problems.
I mean, they were unsolved as of last I checked, but that was a while ago. And we're going to get some updates like later this month at what do they call it? Cosmos Fest.
Cosmos Fest? That sounds
it's
horrifying.
not Fest. It's Cosmos something. Cosmoverse.
Okay.
There's
Cosmoverse. I think it's Cosmoverse.
Yeah, there's a big. It would actually probably be pretty cool to attend the Cosmosverse, right? Like, I think
that one
like
sounds okay.
Cool
If it was called. If it was called the Cosmos Fest, I would definitely be like calling the authorities about some shady shit.
No sleeps on Cosmos Fest.
Okay, I just looked up the validators. My man, CryptoCito, he's number 44 on the validator list. He has 0.45% of the network. He goes by the name StakeCito. Great guy.
I really like that. I really like the handle CryptoCito. I love that.
That's good.
That's really cool.
I don't know what it refers to, but shout out, dude. Okay, let's hit a couple more things. This episode is going to be like just very fundamental focused. We're not going to go too deep into like the state of the different chains right now, and like what's planned for the future, because there are a lot of upgrades and changes planned to the token and to the network in general, to the hub. We won't get into too much of that.
The quote that I heard on the Empire podcast is, quote, "We're going to make EIP 1559 look like a joke," is the plan to the changes to the tokenomics. I was like, wow, that's not financial advice.
Yeah, definitely not financial advice. Although, buying Atom hasn't served you too well in the past couple of years.
It is down only. It's been down only forever. For like a little while, it was like, oh wow, Atom was like, this was the joke, right? It's been like the stable coin of crypto, right? Mm-hmm. But it's effectively just kind of been down only for the last like
Atom
year or two.
Atom is like the chain link of L1s. It's like, you hit the thesis right. You're like, I'm going to ride the L1 wars.
The tech is so good.
It's kind of an L0. So the tech is great.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of hit the wrong one. It's like, you could have bought anything else.
I mean, it has been pumping though, right? The levels.
It has. Lately, it's the only thing that's been pumping.
Yeah, I mean, it's been up only since like mid-June. It hit a low of like $6, and now it's at 13, 14.
Wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know it hit 6. I thought it hit 8. That's pretty good. Not financial advice, but I
mean, and it's been a very steady rise.
Yeah. Well, I think the sellers are all dried out. At this point, like who is selling Atom, bro?
Yeah, you think CryptoCito is paper hands? Absolutely not.
That's the thing. Who still has Atom?
Who still has Atom and hasn't already sold it? I mean, I sold mine like a while ago. I was like, wow, this thing only ever goes down.
Good trade. Yeah, that was like the only good trade I made. I was like, wait, Atom is up. Like, this thing's gonna go down again. Okay, so enough shitting on the Atom token. What else should we cover?
It's tough, right? It's not useful for very much. It's really only useful for staking Atom. Like, it's the only use case. Yeah. It's like gas on the hub, I guess. True. But like, it's just not.
But their whole idea is to not pay gas on the hub. It's to pay gas on other chains, or just to pay little gas.
It's to have just like a plethora of different chains, right? Yeah, and as little gas as possible. Like, that's why we have so many chains.
Yeah, so this is one, I guess like we've already talked about it, but like this has been a core criticism for many years. It's just there's no real value accrual to the Atom token, and it's not clear where that value accrual could come from in the future. I think a lot of L1s are starting to see this now, where it's like ETH, it's pretty clear, like gas is going to stay a constant forever, right? There are fee markets, and when there's a lot of activity, gas goes crazy. You gotta keep buying ETH. With Solana, it's less clear, right? There is no fee market. First of all, that might change. They're talking about implementing a fee market. Then it's like, okay, how is this different at all? But there are other things, but value accrual there, a little less clear, but you still have to buy the token to like participate in everything. If you want to buy NFTs, you need Sol. If you want to, like, I don't know, engage in DeFi, on Solana, like, you need Sol.
I was told yesterday by the head of DeFi at Polygon that, quote, "Bro, you need to be less bearish on DeFi." And I just kind of, and I was like, okay.
This is career advice.
Like, on the spectrum of bearish on DeFi, I thought I was like pretty bullish actually. Look, if you want, sorry, to participate in DeFi, ha ha ha.
I mean, look, but like even with Avalanche, right? It's like Avalanche's thesis on this is like they have these subnets to actually have a subnet and to like have your own token there. You also have to be validating the Avalanche main chain and own a bunch of AVAX. And so there's at least some value accrual going to the AVAX token. With
Polygon,
Atom, it's never been clear. Yeah.
Supernuts is the same thing.
Shill your bags,
token.
bro.
It's a very similar thesis. But like with Sol and ETH, right? Like they've hit this monetary unit. Like NFTs are denominated in these tokens, right? For better or worse, that's how they are. And it's incredible to me that USDC hasn't taken off as a way of valuing NFTs. Like, I personally prefer to think in ETH when it comes to NFTs. I guess everyone else does too. I'm just surprised that nobody else that hasn't become the de facto standard. So with ETH and Sol, you do get that monetary premium as well. With Atom, you get none of this. There's no mechanical like value accrual mechanism. There's no, gas isn't really a big deal. Also, the point of the whole thing is to not have a lot of gas, right? It's to have like enough blockchains that like gas fees don't prohibit people from participating. And you don't have NFTs that are priced in Atom. So what is the Atom token for?
I don't know. I mean,
it's for staking, right? Like,
that's it, really.
That's the point, right? Like, it's like gas on the hub and then staking. And that's why the price has behaved the way that it has, right? And so now we're getting some teasing around Atom 2.0.
So what is Atom 2.0? Do we know anything here? Or is
we don't know anything.
Announcements of announcements?
It's going to be, I mean, it's so bullish, right? Like, they're announcements of announcements. Like, if they never ship anything, Atom will keep going up, right? The most bullish thing you can do in crypto is not actually launch. We don't know much, but I would like to speculate on the wildest thing. What's the craziest thing that you can come up with that would make Atom pump?
That would make Atom pump. Okay, a couple things. Obviously, they're implementing the burn thing, so that's this
is like so not crazy, but they're definitely gonna have. I guess transaction fees go to validators now, and they're gonna burn in the future. I mean, that on its own doesn't help much, right? Because the point of Atom is to stake it, and when people get lower staking rewards because the fees are getting burnt, they're not going to love that. Like they'll unstake and sell.
Okay, let's see. What else? Something with Doge Chain. Definitely something with the Doge Chain.
I like that.
Yeah. If they really wanted to pump, you know.
A one-to-one swap of Atom for Doge.
Yeah. Like, what could they do? Like all Doge users, all Doge Chain users get an airdrop of, you know, I don't know, some other token. I have no idea. I literally have no clue. What is your crazy speculation?
I've actually, and like, look, I advocate for this for every layer one. UST 2.0, baby.
Oh my god.
It's so crazy. It just might work.
Hey. So what, are we just going to run it back? Like what's the deal here?
I would say run it back, but like maybe without like an anchor, right? So I'm in this camp of it could have worked. It actually had a chance. It had a non-zero chance, right? It was. I had a very long argument.
I had a very long argument with somebody about this recently as well. Where
really?
I said this the whole way. Is like, dude, they just got to reach escape velocity. You know, if they reach escape velocity, they'll get there.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. What held them back last time, in my opinion, was what held us back last time as a community, right? We humans, we need a decentralized stablecoin. This is important. We humans, as a society, like we almost made it. But the issue was that the most useful thing to do with UST was to put it in Anchor, as opposed to like propagating it throughout the world. Right? Like, how do you make the stablecoin actually useful? It's like, well, if it becomes the most liquid stablecoin in whatever pair, people are going to use it, right? If it becomes something that gets used to like send value between people, then that's helpful, right? Like, what you need to do is incentivize people using it, or at least like using it to like provide liquidity on like dexes and stuff. You need to incentivize the propagation of this thing. The issue with UST was there are two issues, right? The first is the most valuable thing you could do with UST is to immediately deposit it into Anchor. And this is compounded by the fact that Anchor was right fucking there. You didn't have to bridge it or anything.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
It's like, you know,
hey, you want free 20% on that thing you just bought?
Yeah, exactly. It's like literally at checkout, right? It's like check the box to get 20%, right? So I think we could do it. I really think so. And I think that the only honorable thing that Atom can do for its token holders is to try.
Dude, they've tried other crazy things. All they do is airdrop stuff. So how far off is this, you know?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the Cosmos-based chains do have like a pretty heavy airdrop like meta, and I think they kind of have to, right? Because it's this cold start problem. How do you get your tokens out there, right?
You got to do something to get people, you know, using it. Okay, so let's do maybe a couple final thoughts on just the fundamentals of the Cosmos ecosystem, and leave a little bit for like what we will get into next time, because there are tons of different applications that exist, most of which don't have users, most of which don't do much. I think like one of the biggest, most successful airdrops on Cosmos last year was this thing called Chihuahua Chain. It just like literally does nothing. Like I know people who made like 250 grand on the Chihuahua airdrop. It's really just like an airdrop farming chain right now. Like the whole ecosystem is just airdrop farming. So Yeah, what else do you want to hit on before we get into airdrop farming next episode?
Look, I would like to talk for just a second about the Cosmos SDK because I think there's a lot of misconceptions. So the Cosmos SDK is a toolkit, right, that allows you to create a blockchain. And it handles those sort of core components of like Tendermint consensus, like just getting blocks agreed to, right? It handles the transactions, right? And like, you know, putting them into blocks. It handles like gas and, you know, validators and all of that, right? Staking. Yeah. Those core components can be used to build whatever the fuck you want. But it doesn't necessarily make you part of the Cosmos ecosystem, which to me would be more defined as like having IBC enabled. DYDX announced that they were building their new chain on based on Cosmos on the Cosmos SDK.
Yeah.
Doesn't do anything for Atom. It's not even going to touch the hub ever. So the Atom token never, ever, ever touches that.
Well, it's the exact same with Binance Smart Chain. Like Binance Smart Chain uses both Tendermint and Cosmos SDK, and is not. I don't think it's IBC enabled, right? And I don't think they have plans to. It uses BNB as its native token. Like there's no relation to Atom at all.
Yeah, exactly. Same with Polygon, right? Like Polygon proof of stake is basically built on, I don't think it uses the SDK directly, but it's built with a lot of the same components. Same with, you know, Doge Chain, right? Same with like a lot of the Terra, right? I think Terra actually was technically IBC enabled.
It was working on it at like the very end, or it had just become IBC enabled in like April of this year, or like had announced it or something, and then like the whole collapse happened.
Look, just don't ship. So, like,
shift.
Like being IBC enabled makes you connected to the hub at least, and that's where Atom token is useful. If you're not IBC enabled, like then Cosmos is just like I heard an analogy the other day. It was like the giving tree, right? Cosmos is the giving tree of crypto. They built so much technology and it's so high quality that like everybody chooses to use them as their boilerplate, like their baseline like blockchain architecture. Yeah. And they get nothing in return. And that is just the state of the world for Cosmos right now. It's a tragic figure, right?
Well, it could change.
Gives and gives and gives until it can give no more.
Atom 2.0, Cosmos 2.0. Is it Cosmos 2.0 or Atom 2.0? I think the tokenomics are changing, so it's Atom 2.0. Who knows?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Atom 2.0. Yeah, because it's primarily token related. Yeah. Anything else you want to get into before airdrop farming next time?
Not really. I think this is a good way to touch on the fundamentals. There are projects that I think we could talk about right now, but I think this is like a good, like, just hit the tech, hit the history, hit why does this exist, the core questions, and then we can get into like what the ecosystem looks like now, and then what it might look like in the future in the next one.
Beautiful.
Great. Well, this has been part 1 of our Cosmos deep dive. We will be back later in the week with our decent crypto recap of everything that happened. This has been fun, Matt. Till then, stay decent.
None of this was financial advice, legal advice, investment advice, or any other kind of advice. If you're looking for advice, you are definitely in the wrong place. Until next time, stay decent.